January 11th, 2016. I'm Dana Durnford, your host, nuclear proctologist. .org. And we're talking about Crazy Rod Adams today. And Rod is a notorious propaganda machine for the nuclear industry for a very, very long time. And we have a great show lined up today, and you can find more about me, the nuclear proctologist, .org. And what we do is we are boots on the ground. Researchers who have explored the coastline of Canada in the last couple of years for 260 days, up to 5 months, without making it back home. And what we discovered was an incredible extinction event playing out on the coastline of Canada due to the radioactive fallout from Japan's melted reactors. And so today we're going to cover Rod Adams and crew,
and
who are...
I think they probably would have been able to restore cooling within about a week had they not damaged the vent and not damaged the containments.
Well,
if they lose power to those to that reactor or to any other reactors past a few hours from now, you might reach a 3 Mile
Island after a few hours. Kind of debunks whatever they got to say now, does it?
And we had completely different casualties.
And one of the biggest problems they had was once those tops blew off, they had even more debris in places that were radioactive debris to that point.
Well, you can say the tops blew off. I'm going to say unequivocally the buildings detonated. There's a big difference.
This is where they couldn't. It just was in their way.
And one of the things that was the first explosion came at a very bad time because there were there was a large emergency power cable being routed from a generator that was brought on the site, and
this is what that country looked at. This is what happened to the site. Oh yeah, they were running a cable over it, Dana.
Which, I think it delayed restoration of electrical power by another 24 hours.
Do you think they got restoration power back into these buildings 24 hours later? Oh, Rod.
Right. And because the explosion itself created such damage that added to the delay.
Yeah. I can think of a few other things that added to the delay.
Now they had damaged electrical equipment.
Electrical equipment. I'll show you where the electrical equipment in the building is too. It's up there about, a couple of 1,000 feet. That's where it's to in that particular building.
That explosion cascaded and caused the explosions. Caused the loss of control of Unit 2 and Unit 3. And
then your mama said, "That's not my child." Tokyo professor breached containment at reactor 2, extremely grave, more prominent radiation spike after number 2. Oh, really? Have you seen number 3? No explosion occurred. Oh, okay. All right, sure. Whatever you say, boss. Moron. There's a nuclear explosion at number 3. I believe the fuel rods were blown out of the fuel pool. Gee, I don't know. Let me think about that. I'll get back to you on it. I swear. When I stop laughing.
The loss of Unit 3 caused the hydrogen bleed over to go and cause the containment in Unit 4 to blow up.
That's okay. Well, there's number 4. Containment is missing. And same for number 3. Buildings are missing. They're missing.
Right.
So, not the containment, but the secondary containment structure. The concrete
underneath. It blew up.
The refueling floor.
The refueling floor. Thank you very much.
Right. And these people are what? Refueling fuel experts, writing for Fuel Cycle Week. We'll show you some of that coming up. What kind of fuel is at the top of the buildings? That's 3. There's number 4. I don't know how to put this to you, but yeah, the fuel pools at the top of the building kind of don't exist. Now, most people don't know, but reactor 1 melted down in 5 hours, despite what these creatures are telling you. It was all gone, baby.
And just a correction, Cal, I don't think that there was any serious damage to the primary containments in any of the vessels, as far as I can tell. The explosions we're talking about, the damage was to the secondary containment.
And the secondary containment kind of doesn't exist, Rod. I know you're a nuclear expert and everything, so I'm sure nobody's ever called you on it before, but the buildings were kind of 190 foot high, Rod. You know, the fuel pools, 10 years of fuel, 5 reactor cores are those red puddles you see up there that are not there.
Actually, I'm talking about the overpressurization.
The overpressurization.
I guess I should
clearly caused leaks.
Yeah, cause leaks? You sure about that? There's got to be... Are we talking about the same Fukushima, I wonder? Or are these people just running rampant and wild?
Actually, I'm talking about the overpressurization.
The overpressurization.
No, they're talking
clearly
about
caused leaks.
Yeah,
That's the only way to get water out.
to be clear on that, is that the
Anyway,
containment
water.
vessels, the primary containment vessels, were compromised around 10 or 11 o'clock that evening. Somewhere between 10 or 11 o'clock to 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning was when those containment vessels, when they were looking at doing the venting. And it was just, this is part of that bleed over of regulatory blurring of the line between the responsibility of ownership and of operation with the responsibility of regulation. So it's very, very confusing.
You're confusing. And so what you got there is there's no containment, and they're throwing the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society in there. You're not going to see these people.
For those people.
You're not going to see these people in there cleaning up.
For those people that were there, and because of that confusion, they didn't act as they know that they needed to, and that is a real shame. And they were under tremendous pressure.
And yet, all of that, all of these events. I remember watching that on TV. That was on a Tuesday, if I recall, the Tuesday after all this happened. None of this resulted in radiological releases that have even sent anybody to the hospital.
Well, first off, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, and 7 people died on one street alone, and inhaling just one hot particle, which they're all hot particles. That's why they're putting them in one-ton bags, and that's why there's 30 million of these one-ton bags. And, of course, 11 becquerels a kilogram, you start to see heart problems. And a study group before Fukushima was 0.8% of children. It's 3 in a million normally. Now it's 13,646 out of 40,000. Not out of a million, but out of 40,000 when it's normally 3 in a million. Data showed there was a large spike in death, particularly infants, in the 14 weeks when the big plumes came through. Yeah?
Correct.
Right.
It's incredible.
That you don't have a soul or a heart or a conscience or a compass or a moral compass. Extreme increase of mortality caused by cardiac diseases in Fukushima, and the death rates would give you the creeps because it's jumped. So 12,695 people compared to the same month of the year before. It was up 12%. An extra 12,000 people. And by tumors was an extra 2,000. Cardiac was an extra 2,500. 55% of the girls tested. Not 3 in a million, but 55% of those tested. 11 to 15. And here's the real number, isn't it?
That is incredible to me. And there's been a lot of talk about, there's been a huge, every time I watch basically any expert who's been interviewed in the mainstream media about what TEPCO could have done.
Like Rod?
I'm not an apologist for them either, but there's I find it just remarkable that, like, is there the same second guessing going on with the other seawalls along the coast that also failed? Other seawalls along that coast also failed, and they failed with a truly catastrophic result, whereas this was a media storm.
Yeah, like that wasn't a media storm, and rightfully so. This was a media storm because it was a power plant that had enormous implications. 30 million bags alone.
Part of the I have to throw in one of the blogs I wrote during this time period when I was fairly stressed out. You guys might remember Slow Motion Disaster Movie.
Possibly.
Part of the reason that Fukushima became such a...
Your blog post, you mean?
Yeah, the blog post.
Yeah, I remember
Part of the reason Fukushima became such a media frenzy was it was a slow motion disaster movie. We had heroes, we had villains, we had end of the world scenario, and we had the shark with this damn power plant that kept not failing.
It kept not failing. Listen to him laugh that time.
Okay.
That was the biggest dud in the... Anyway.
Yeah.
Let's do that again.
Part of the such a media frenzy was it was a slow motion disaster movie. We had heroes, we had villains, we had end of the world scenario, and we had the shark with this damn power plant that kept not failing. Okay.
That was the biggest dud in the... Anyway.
The biggest dud, eh? How the brainwashing was done in Fukushima. Tweets paint the propaganda effort by the Japanese government that extended to North America, Canada, and America, and everywhere else. Why they're saying there's no releases, they're picking up 30 million one-ton bags. Why they're saying no releases, the buildings are annihilated, completely destroyed, permanently forever and ever. There's no one there with cutting torches or scaffolds. There's nobody there walking around, only the destitute and the victims who die shortly after. Anybody goes there dies. The rods were thrown all over the site.
But it was like watching a 2-hour movie of the opening of the movie is the earthquake and tsunami, and then you have the Fukushima 50 heroes, and
there's just thousands of these alleged Fukushima 50 heroes. When you get close to the rods, just walk past these things, you're going to die within a couple of weeks. You're talking about 100 sievers, 500 sievers coming into these rods. But you're talking about the bulk of the building where it's, when you go past these buildings, they're putting out x-rays and gamma showing, and neutron burst. You walk past it, you're a dead man, dead woman walking. You will die in a very, if you stayed there for 40 minutes, you're dead. If you got close to it within a minute, if you were lucky enough to last that long, you melt your organs. Let's keep going.
But it was like watching a 2-hour movie of the opening of the movie is the earthquake and tsunami, and then you have the Fukushima 50 heroes, and
they all died.
You have the villains.
And 5 hospitals refused to provide medical care, but they weren't talked about in media. We can't be seen by a doctor. It's just not right. It'll be confusing if the results are different. Remember all of these headlines you can link directly over to the original story. They're just aggregating it. It was a mystery explosion at Reactor 4, really? What caused by radiation dissolving water in a spent fuel pool. Contradicts TEPCO's assumption. And they were the villain. Plus, TEPCO owns a lot of the big hospitals.
The incompetent government and
hospital president said people will be healthier after radiation exposure. This is what Rod and crew says all the time. And there's no argument allowed. This is what Rod and them do for a living. No argument allowed. High radiation levels prevented the helicopters, but they got power hooked up 24 hours later, Dana. Yeah, you didn't, Rod.
You have all the victims of the people who lived in the region who were forced to evacuate.
Forced to evacuate? This was after the World Health Organization raised it 75 times higher. Officials had, rather, than the World Health Organization considers murder. That's why you have all those thyroid issues that they try so hard. Because cancer doesn't show up for 10, 20, 30, 40 years normally. Yeah? There's 1,800 illnesses, diseases, autoimmune deficiencies that can show up and will, and even liquidate your assets trying to deal with them. Is there irreversible heart damage for children with 50 becquerels a kilogram? Just once. Imagine eating it every day like you're doing in Japan, North America. When radioactive cesium enters the body, 75% lodges in the heart muscle tissue where it pulses every second.
And frankly, you had media who were bored and didn't have enough to report on. They couldn't stand out there. Remember, they kept playing the burning refinery in the background because it was really boring to show these plants. And then they would blow up. Like perfect timing. Oh, they're getting bored. They're going to go away. And then the plant.
They showed those plants. I'll get to it in a bit. But they showed that also, right? Because it wasn't a nuclear plant. But it actually was a release there at that facility. This is why they're banging at us so hard. And I'll show you the headline of that in a minute.
Plus, the refinery fire was mushroom-shaped, a fiery cloud, and the CNN ran that all the time, but with the headline about the nuclear plant.
See what she just invoked at that time?
Right, because mushroom clouds are clearly nuclear, right?
Yeah, quite lately.
Well, the mushroom cloud is generally because you got all these heavy particles. And like you've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan when they used depleted uranium, how the cloud hung over the battlefield for like 6 days, even though it was windy. And Anderson Cooper had reported on it each day from the rooftops of those protected buildings because the government didn't want to kill CNN as their best friend, yeah? Okay.
They didn't, so you'd get this hit, this sort of visual message.
Well, what that facility was, there was 1,800 pounds of depleted uranium. It was actually fuel rods. And so a gram of this stuff is 1 million watts. And it's 88 times 78 billion atoms per gram. Natural radiation per gram would have about 160,000 atoms that are emitters. They can't hurt you. Like potassium, you can just eat it. It's not going to hurt you. But a gram of this stuff will kill you just having it close to you right away. Rod has pictures of them, right? But there was 1,800 pounds at that facility that they're talking about.
And, why would you think further?
Twice lately, Rosatom has used that same skill of that.
Right? Stuff like this.
And, why would you think further?
Twice lately, Rosatom has used that same skill of that refinery fire on their Facebook page at the head of talking about remembrances of Fukushima. I called them out on it both times. Why are you using Rosatom, the Russians?
Yeah, he came after him.
Yeah.
He came after me, he said it like a dozen times. Really? Yeah,
okay.
Because he knew what was going on there and he wanted to bury it. That's what these people do. They dig the graves to get rid of the bodies if they were asked in a heartbeat.
And I called them out on both times and said, this is clearly not a photograph of Fukushima.
They would kill each other's children rather than go down in shame. Let's put it that way. These are sociopaths. These are completely out of control, completely disingenuous, completely out of touch with any kind of a reality.
And it's not even any nuclear plant anymore. This is a refinery fire that occurred, after the tsunami. Why are you using it?
Because there was 1,800 pounds there. And that's a pretty good-looking picture.
I didn't get a response either time.
Of course not.
And by the way, maybe someone else has been more successful. I've tried to find out whether anyone was killed in those explosions of the gas tanks at the refinery. And
She's trying to find out. There was 16,000 people washed away. She was looking for ways to discredit a nuclear accident is what she was up to. It's horrible to even say something like that. Can you imagine if you were in an honest world, if they had to worry about media coming after them? Do you think they would utter any of those words today?
Fire that burned for 10 days. And the official word of the owners, the oil company, was everyone's fine.
Everybody's
so no
fine.
Workers were harmed.
Now, so this was a radiological release, is why that terminology showed up. Right? That was their official statement. No, in other words, there was no insurance premium, so the stockholders had nothing. Don't fret about that part of it. It's not a radiological, right, by implication. But when we show you the headlines, there actually was, it burnt.
When these gas tanks exploded.
So they focused on the tanks instead of the 1,800 pounds confirmed. There was much more than that common spent fuel pools, probably 9 million pounds there.
Part of the problem, I think, is that, frankly, they're going to, if workers were harmed during the explosion, they could always say, well, it was really the tsunami swept them out.
Now, an interesting part about this to remember is that when these things burn like that, they go into a chain reaction also, so that they're no different than a reactor cord melting down. So 1,500 assemblies is probably what they were talking about. We know how to use numbers and then lie.
We don't really know.
And there's 80 rods in assembly. Each rod is 18 pounds and 12 feet long.
They didn't even say that. They just said, no, everyone's fine.
Right.
Oh, and wow. That's generally the...
Now, why would you say something like that after a tsunami and an earthquake, and then all the focus is in on you because that was burning out of control? This was like another reactor melting down. This is what happens. This is why it's in that facility so dangerous.
And if you try to find out about all the pollution from toxins from boats and automobiles and stuff sloshing around in the surf from the tsunami, and busted gas pipelines and
yeah, they covered that nonstop. But
oil tanker, coast, those things that are along the coast where ships fuel up and all of that stuff. That's
sure.
There's 400 kilometers of the coastline got washed away, up to 10 kilometers inshore, with multiple 15 nuclear reactors, 4 plants in that 400 kilometer zone that went into station blackout. The worst thing possible.
All of that had to have put a lot of toxins into the environment, and it's.
But they're nothing compared to a meltdown. All the pollution on the planet, all the plastic on the planet. Plastic doesn't pulse every second. Animals can swim right past it. It's not affecting them. But when it's radiation, they're getting pulsed. And when there's so much, like Japan, my apologies, pop up. Finish that.
It's impossible for me, not speaking Japanese, not being, to find out if there was any health impacts.
Right? Her laughing at the end of it? Hang on.
Yeah, good point. You can't measure that stuff by turning on an instrument in North America, so it's basically out of sight, out of mind.
Turning on an instrument. No, we don't build instruments because it's not dangerous in the way that nuclear is, or anywhere close to it. But we know about how mineral dust alone can come across to North America.
I think that the fossil fuel industry in Japan was so relieved to have Fukushima happen because it completely took everyone's mind off all the other stuff.
Yeah, but it was a great opportunity to run many natural gas commercials during all of the media attention.
And so what they're trying to do to their listeners, right? This was the radio show, and this is day 3 of it, covering that one broadcast, the 2nd year anniversary. And we'll just keep going because we're running out of time.
There was.
Okay. So the winds blew from Fukushima to Tokyo on the day reactor 3, which was mixed oxide fuel, blew completely apart, detonated, lost its entire inventory. They confirmed meltdowns at the beginning, right? Episode 1, you can hear Rod, 3 meltdowns right away, right? But then no releases, Rod? Really? Even though he knows they were going to pick up 30 million bags, he didn't pick it up at a time. But he knew they were going to be doing this. 60 hours of emission directly at Tokyo. It's devastating.
Everyone just really forgot about the earthquake and the tsunami. As soon as the nuclear plant, the hydrogen explosions occurred, whoopee.
Yeah, whoopee, because you had to pick up 30 million bags. If you owned a company that was making the bags, you'd be going whoopee. Distribution of atmospheric aerosols, transport, transformation, removal, pollution, impact. Let me resize. Resize that. I got no idea where I'm to anymore. Okay, don't worry about it. So there's lots of studies about how the stuff crosses the ocean and atmospheric aerosols transport, lots of models. But, I mean, uranium-234 was detected in Hawaii, in Southern California, Seattle.
Everyone just really forgot about the earthquake and the tsunami. As soon as the nuclear plant, the hydrogen explosions occurred. Whoops.
Well, because they were finding it in April in Hawaii because 238 spiked 50 times in Hawaii a year. That's meant it was on its way. What they were looking at was the uranyl peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. And what these are created from the sulfur peroxide hydrogen of salt water being sprayed on the reactor cores or on the melted downs left over. And you're talking about temperatures of about 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So this will atomize and aerosol everything you throw at it. There's nothing it won't destroy instantly because we don't have anything to contain that. It consumes everything it's came in contact with ionized product. And what we've seen in California was 1,500 of these buckyballs. They ingest just the radioactive material. Let me explain that for 1 second. Hopefully I can. Hopefully I can, because I do so much here. I lose track of shit so much. So curium isotopes, am I zoomed in or something? Curium isotopes is the major byproduct. You got to worry about all of them. You got to worry about the plutonium. You got to worry about all the daughters of uranium because that's what the reactors run on. The strontium, the cesium, all those daughters is not just 134 or 137. These are hot particles. Neptunium, very long lives, americiums. These are spawned in the bowels of hell. The very bowels of hell. Let's finish up.
That was it.
even though that was not the most spectacular footage I've ever seen. I've seen much more, on local TV.
Of course.
You're talking about the oil refinery.
It was very frustrating. Trust me, it was very, very frustrating.
Another minute to go.
Well, this is where I get into my.
The natural gas plant blew up in Connecticut a couple of years ago.
We're going to pick up tomorrow.
Killed 6 people.
Here.
They were workers in the plant. That's 6 more people than have ever died in nuclear plants, commercial nuclear.
Right, and
Right, listen to that. Over 1,000 workers, 10,000 extra counts per minute. All those isotopes I was just showing you. These are dead. These people will die soon, or if they're not already dead, they'll have strokes, heart attacks. They'll have up to 1,800 diseases before cancer shows up. Cancer is the last one to show up. 200 sieverts per hour. That's why you don't see Rod Adams down there. 5 sieverts will kill you. That will kill you. It will kill you. So we'll pick up at number 85 tomorrow right here. Let's call it a day. I'm going to head out in the boat again. We got reports of 50 dolphins out here. We're going to go out, see if we can run into them, catch up with them. And anybody that's going to call me, remember, this costs me money. Everything costs is money. I don't got money. I don't have any. I get donations from people when I ask once in a while. Not all the time or nothing, but when I really need something, we push for a while and we end up getting it. But I'm not Rod Adams or the rest of the crew, right? I'm not these people. I don't have access to any kind of funds or any kind of support whatsoever. Only what people on the internet decide they're able or willing or morally obligated to do. And there's many, many, many incredible people that have got us through thick and thin that will go down in history as heroes. And I've done more help for this planet than I could ever do. And that is a story I'll explain in the future. We say hello and hugs for everybody. You can pay, you can donate. Links are below my videos, right to my nuclearproctologist.org website and through PayPal. Links are below directly. Hugs for everybody. Censor, Amthurst, Shani, Charles. And we were talking to Charles last night. Thanks, Charles. Stacy, CJ, Censor. Hello, everybody. Cynthia, I'm your author. Veronica's out there, we know. Yep, Killer. Elaine, Thomas Ackerman. Hugs for everybody. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to make a go for it and run out and get a few minutes in on the boat. A few hours in on the boat because the weather is finally broke. You got sunny skies, no winds, there's not as much radiation. Remember, they're having major earthquakes. We'll probably cover it on the weekend. We'll be back tomorrow for day 4 of Rod Adams. And these shows get better each time. Trust me, I've worked all night to make sure tomorrow is going to be a great show too. When I get back, I'll be at it again. Hugs for everybody.